It was supposed to be a flight to Tacloban, but the Civil Aviation Authority would not allow AirAsia to land in the Tacloban airport. So the decision was to land in Mactan and then get on the C-130 bound for Tacloban. It was a humanitarian flight to bring a 129-man contingent from the National Capital Region's Police Regional Public Safety Battalion, Philippine National Red Cross personnel, and a cargo load of relief goods, and to bring survivors back to Manila.
Captain Dexter, Commendador speaking. I'd like to welcome you aboard RPC 8987, AirAsia Zest's relief flight to Mactan, and with your continuing flight to Tacloban via C-130.
But we landed in Mactan Air Base at 4:26 in the afternoon, so it would be too late for the C-130 to fly us to Tacloban. This C-130 would not be able to fly out, they said, but it had brought in evacuees from Tacloban. And our long-lost news crew, David Santos and his cameraman, Alvin Villafranca, and assistant cameraman, Harold Barras, who were only too happy to have survived the onslaught of Super Typhoon Yolanda as it made its first landfall in the town of Giwan. There were many other people on board that C-130 who looked as if they had just stepped out of a war zone, many of them bringing what was left of their belongings, holding on to their children, like this young woman who lived through what she and her child must have thought was the end of the world. This was her first phone call to the outside world since Yolanda struck. And of course, there were the injured. They were the walking wounded. Young and old, they needed to be brought to the hospital for medical attention. This man cradled his little boy in his arms. Soldiers lifted this man in his wheelchair onto an emergency vehicle. Some of the evacuees asked to send messages to their relatives. And some still didn't even know where their family was.
Tamaan ng malaki na kahoy at saka dito. Nasa dagat ako. Tamaan ng kahoy. Wasaw talaga. Katapos yung asawa ko, sinusyukaw, nawawala at saka yung eldest ko na anak na lalaki. Mamatay kami.
The humanitarian flight we took into Mactan was the same flight many of these survivors, these evacuees, would take back to Manila. It was obvious they wanted to get out.
Okay, ma'am. Ito wala po problema. Makakasakay na po tayo.
While the evacuees were signing up for the free flight back to Manila, the relief goods we had brought in were loaded onto the C-130. And then it was time to go home. On the plane, some of the survivors got to make the most heartbreaking phone calls they would ever have to make. Arriving at your destination is usually a happy moment, but not for those who survived Yolanda. What made it easier for many of them was that their families were waiting for them to welcome them home. There are no words for tragedies that engulf a family, or the realization that you survived what could have been your last day on Earth. Pia Hontiveros, Solar News.